Howdy, pilgrims. It's IB Nation Sports Talk. He's Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. It's Mailbag Day, so get your questions in if you're just checking in right now. Vince, how close are you to being done with school for the current academic year?
Extremely. And the
Okay.
next time you see me, I will be done. So Friday's our last day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me say, I think I heard that South Bend ends tomorrow, like Thursday or something like that. I don't know if you'd
I don't
heard
know.
that.
I have no idea anymore. They're like an ex-girlfriend. I try not to pay a whole lot of attention.
Okay. Okay.
I honestly don't know about South Bend. Usually I do hear, but I'm not sure.
Yes, pilgrims. I watched a Western over the weekend, so I guess I had Western
explains it.
stuff on my mind. I don't know.
That explains it. Speaking of watching movies, you know, that account that you and I both follow on Twitter did the Top Gun Maverick deal today.
When I logged into Twitter, does your phone do this? Like when you open up the app and then there'll be something at the top of your Twitter feed, but then you start to look at it and it does the update and then that tweet kind of goes away.
Disappears.
Yes.
Yeah, the first thing that I see is what I saw when I closed it in the first place. Is that what you're getting at?
Well,
right?
That I'm not sure if it's exactly the last one that you watched or the last one,
Okay.
Before you closed it, but that particular tweet that you're talking about was there. And then I started scrolling and I couldn't find it and I couldn't remember the name of the account. So
All the Right Moves, I believe, is the name of the account.
All the Right Movies. All the Right Movies.
Is it movies? Okay. Well, there you go. That makes more sense.
Yes. We pieced it together.
Yes.
Very well.
But it was good. There was a lot of, they talked a lot about the different casting choices and some other people that were up for different roles. And then, of course, how I guess they wanted to do a sequel in like 1990. And Tom Cruise was like, not going to happen. And then they finally decided they were going to do it. And then COVID hit and then it got delayed, the whole process there. So, and then they wanted to have it exclusively on Paramount Plus, and Tom Cruise was actually the one that said, no, this needs to be in the theaters.
Oh, exactly. And I'm glad that he did that.
Me too.
Glenn Powell, I don't know if it was in that particular thread, but Glenn Powell, who played Hangman, I saw something last week where he was about to run out of money, I guess, as they were waiting for the release of Maverick.
Really?
Yeah, his agent was like, you're getting pretty close here. And Tom Cruise kept pushing it. But of course, things worked out very well for Glenn Powell with the waiting because he's become one of the most and guys in Hollywood since in the last 2 years.
Yes, now he's in pretty great shape.
Yeah.
And yes.
Yeah. But he wanted to be Rooster. Was that in the
second?
thread?
Came in second place.
Right.
For Rooster, but they also said that they had 3 finalists for Rooster. They all went to Tom Cruise's house.
Right.
And
to do
auditioned.
Yeah.
And basically like a final call kind of a deal. And, they cast Rooster and he came in second, but they were impressed enough with him that they gave him that other part, which I think fit pretty nicely. I mean, the guy they cast as Rooster looks an awful lot
Miles Teller, especially.
Like
when when they put the mustache on him and the sunglasses, it was amazing how much he looks like.
Oh my goodness! Like, and apparently
that was basically
that was the actor's choice to grow the mustache. Like that wasn't even in the script.
Good choice.
Great choice.
Very good choice.
So clearly we could talk about this all day.
Tommy said he watched Top Gun with the kids, skipping through the adult stuff. I mean, there was some, kissing and heavy petting, I guess you'd say. But, if they're really young, I guess, you would skip that. But he says, just up until Goose dies. And they were mad that.
So you're hiding the fact
the jets went up
from your children that Goose died? So they're living in a fantasy world where Goose is still alive?
Right.
What have you done to your children?
I mean, it is the downer of the whole movie.
It is, but
come on, Tommy.
You got to let your kids. They got to feel
4, 7, and 8.
Well, they got to feel the hurt, man. You can't make them sit through Top Gun and not feel the hurt. It's part of it.
That's right.
It's part of it.
Reality. Come on. Let's start with a Tommy question in the mailbag
Ooh,
today.
look at that.
What do you
Tommy.
think?
First.
He says, what would be better for Notre Dame? Riley Leonard wins a Heisman and Faison, Collins, etc. One of the receivers basically wins the Blitnikoff, or Leonard wins the O'Brien Award and Faison wins the Heisman. Which is the better scenario?
Faison doesn't have a prayer of winning the Heisman. That is not that is not going to happen. So I'm gonna nix the third one. But what would be better? Let's see. I mean, what would be better is Leonard winning the Heisman. If Leonard wins the Heisman, then Notre Dame's in the championship, or they're darn close to it. They're going to be able to make a run.
Playoff.
They're probably undefeated, maybe one loss, but Heisman winners don't come from teams that aren't in national championship contention. So I would say Leonard winning the Heisman is the best for Notre Dame, because if he wins the Heisman, then there's a chance that the wide receivers could win the Blitnikoff, that all these other parts and pieces could win, because that means Notre Dame is winning. And so Leonard winning the Heisman is the absolute on this one. I think is best for Notre Dame.
Yeah, any of them winning the Heisman, any Notre Dame player winning the Heisman would be great for Notre Dame.
Sure.
But what would be best for Notre Dame is Riley Leonard, for some of the reasons that you mentioned, and the fact that now you've shown that you can go out. You went to the transfer portal and you brought in a guy. He comes in, he stays for 1 year at Notre Dame, and he wins the Heisman Trophy. And that's also going to mean that he's going to be a top 5 pick, just like all the, Jaden Daniels last year. But it's good because it says that an elite quarterback coming out of high school can excel at Notre Dame in Mike Denbrock's offense specifically, because we saw what Mike Denbrock could do down at LSU. And now, whether you're a transfer portal guy, whether you are an elite quarterback prospect coming out of high school, you can come to Notre Dame and be elite and win the biggest award in college football, the Heisman Trophy. And that, that also translates into a million other things, like in today's world, that translates into a lot of money as well, obviously, NIL opportunities and the whole kit and caboodle. So from the profile that Notre Dame is going to have raised, if they have a quarterback win the Heisman Trophy, I would say Riley Leonard for sure.
And Salty brings up a great point. If Riley Leonard wins the Heisman, that means Denbrock has developed 2 back-to-back Heisman winners. Like, that is a mic drop moment for sure.
Yes. And as USMA 87 was piggybacking, Heisman winner is a likely playoff contender. They'll be in the college football playoff if Riley Leonard is a Heisman Trophy.
Absolute guarantee, 100%.
How deep they go. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And if he wins the Heisman, they're going to be favored to be in there towards the end. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Salty has his own Heisman question.
What's all the Heisman questions?
I know, a lot of Heisman talk tonight. Which would you prefer, a Heisman winner at quarterback, wide receiver, defensive back, or running back?
Well, this does piggyback a little bit off of the last question, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, as long as Notre Dame is winning a Heisman, I don't care what position it is. It could be Thor the punter, for all I care.
But that'd be something.
That would be
a hell of a year for a punter.
Yes, it would be. That would be something. But I think that not only do I want Notre Dame to win a Heisman, that would be fantastic, obviously. I want them to win a national championship. And the best chance of them winning a national championship is if the quarterback is the Heisman Trophy winner.
Right.
So that's kind of my piggyback off the last question. If Riley Leonard is winning the Heisman, he's having a hell of a year. And if Riley Leonard has a hell of a year, then so does the rest of the offense.
Right.
So is the team. They got a better chance.
Quarterbacks get eliminated from Heisman talk as they lose more games. Now, it was different for Jaden Daniels last year because their offense, and he was so prolific, and he was so prolific in it. So it changed a little bit. But what tends to happen is teams in contention, quarterback has a bad game, the team stumbles, that kind of thing. That tends to start eliminating quarterbacks. And that's when you've got a chance for wide receivers and running backs to kind of sneak into the picture is when that kind of stuff starts happening. So, again, for all the reasons that I just mentioned as it pertained to what I want a receiver or a quarterback to do it would be the quarterback, because just in a macro sense, it's going to be so much better for Notre Dame in just the full myriad of ways. From the fact that if it's Riley Leonard, that means that they're in the playoff, and that probably means that they're one of the top 5 ranked teams. And, they're just everything else that, all the other stuff that I talked about that comes with it, the national perception of offense and quarterback and everything else at Notre Dame. So I would still want it to be the quarterback of all the positions.
Yeah.
But again, any Heisman's great.
Oh,
but the quarterback is still the one that I would want.
Right.
Andre, is it better to have a quarterback that has arm strength or arm talent?
I need some clarification. Arm strength doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I want arm talent because that says to me accuracy. Now, I don't know necessarily what Andre's definition of arm talent is. I want accuracy.
It's a very loose definition.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is an actual, kind of like people were wanting, clarification yesterday when we were talking about, is this a make or break year for Marcus Freeman? And people, what exactly does make or It's like the same thing with arm talent. What, I think everyone probably has their own definition of arm talent.
Yeah, I think to me, arm talent is a combination of strength and accuracy. Like that's arm talent. That's different than arm strength, right? Because arm strength just means you can throw the ball really, really hard. You just don't necessarily know where it's going to end up. And we've seen quarterbacks like that at Notre Dame in the past. I want arm talent because that also equals accuracy. I mean, and it also means anticipation, and it means all of those different things. So I'll take arm talent over arm strength any day of the week.
Yeah, like you can throw the ball far, but you can also find those windows where you are going to be able to put the ball pinpoint pretty much where you want to put the ball.
Exactly.
And like arm strength comes with that, but that precise accuracy, not just like, it's one thing I think to complete 70% of your passes, but like if you're completing 67%, again, and like you're the kind of guy who can push the ball downfield, which tends to mean you're going to have a few more incompletions. But when it's time, you can put it at the exact spot that you need to put it. I think that's the guy that I want. So not just a guy who can heave it downfield, but one who can throw it on a dime where he needs to throw it. Like I think Patrick Mahomes right now is obviously the epitome of arm talent with all the different arm angles and slots and everything else that he has. Plus the fact that it seems like, 9 times out of 10, he's putting it still exactly where he wants, regardless of where that ball is coming out. If he's throwing it down, around his hip or throwing it with his left hand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. 100%.
So that's what I would take. DJ, the Irish bury Texas A&M by 17 plus points. Where does your undefeated season potential rate on the Sunday after on a scale of 1 to 10? So if Notre Dame beats Texas A&M by 17 plus, how confident are we on a scale of 1 to 10 that Notre Dame's going to go undefeated?
Well, I mean, game one is the roadblock, right? It's the speed bump. It's the, they got to win the first one if they're going to win them all, right? And I mean, I don't know if my 1 through 10 grade goes up significantly if they blow them out versus if they just win the game. To be honest with you, this game is one that I think Notre Dame is the better team in pretty much all areas except maybe their defensive line versus Notre Dame's offensive line, which is a big area. Don't get me wrong, but I think Notre Dame's more talented everywhere else. They should win this game. I don't know if they should win this game by burying them, and I don't know that necessarily matters. So they just need to win this game. If they win the game, I feel like I'm an 8.5 on them going undefeated. If they absolutely bury them, maybe it goes up half a point. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that it matters that much to me. I just want them to win the game. They need to find a way to win that first game. I don't really care what it looks like.
I mean, the Elko factor and the fact that you're going on the road to Texas A&M are probably the two biggest concerns that most people have. Now you can, drill it down and talk about the offensive line and things like that, because you're going into that situation. But to me, because this game is expected to be so close, and A&M does have a pretty good defense, how elite they are, I don't know. I still think it should favor Riley Leonard and Notre Dame's offense in that game. But if they win the game by that kind of margin on the road, the biggest question to me is still some of the stuff that we were talking about on yesterday's show. Regardless of if they go on the road and win in convincing fashion to open the season, what are they going to look like the next week? To me, it's always going to be about, and I don't want to, like be Danny Downer all season, like they're dominating teams or whatever. But they're going to come home. They're gonna play. Who is it they're playing in that Northern Illinois in that home opener? Are they going to come home and kind of sleepwalk through Northern Illinois in the home opener after a big road win to open up the season down at Texas A&M in College Station? To me, this whole season is going to be about consistency and playing at an elite level of play, regardless of who the opponent is and whether it's home or on the road. Consistency is going to be the biggest thing to me. So how much does my scale change? I would say, well, it's not really how much does your scale change. It's still how confident does, I guess I'm re-looking at the question. How confident does that make you that they'll go undefeated? I would still put it around an 8, but that question is going to have to be asked and answered every week.
Yeah.
Can they be consistent regardless of opponent and regardless of where the game is played?
Well, I didn't listen to your guys' show last night yet.
Well,
but
that's
I
on
assume it is on me 100%. But you guys talked about make or break year for Marcus Freeman and all of that. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say the word consistency was used by either one or both of you, because that's going to be the biggest test is the consistency of Marcus Freeman and the way he coaches his team and the way he goes from week to week to week, because he does get this team up for big home games. He gets them up for it. No problem. I feel really good about the home games for Notre Dame right now. It's the road games that I have a little bit more of an issue with at the present. And so can he be consistent week in and week out, getting this team prepared, going on the road for big games and things like that? And we're going to find out a little bit of that week 1. Now, here's the difference to me. Getting ready for week 1 is different than a big road game in the middle of the season. Yeah. Right. You can spend all summer getting ready for week 1, whether it's on the road or at home. Yeah. It's the opener. It's the easiest thing to think about, right? It's what is it going to be like when they go on the road in the middle of the year? That's going to be the consistency that I need to see from Marcus Freeman. And so I still feel like this schedule is very amenable to going undefeated, right? And you need to win the first one in order to do that. And that's why I say they need to just win. That's the most important piece to me.
Yeah.
If they look great and they blow out A&M, I'm still going to feel good about the season, but hesitant week to week because you just never know with college football. You just don't.
Yep. So Brent got in a Top Gun Maverick comment at the very end of the show. Like it came up. It was one of those, just like the super chat from DK last week.
Right.
The end of the show. And then the question popped up that he had watched Top Gun Maverick. We asked him how, what he thought. He loved it. Brent said he was 2 minutes behind live yesterday. Top Gun Maverick, absolutely phenomenal, but I'm not sure it was better than the original. The expectations for Maverick, very high. It's interesting. Do you ever go to IMDb, the independent movie database?
I know it, but I don't.
I mean, it's got every movie, TV show, and every like actor and actress and stuff like that. But they've got like for TV shows and movies, they've got a scale of 1 to 10, like for each TV episode, as well as like the series and the movie. It's interesting that Maverick has a 9 out of 10 rating on there, and the original is like 6.2. I was shocked at how low the original is.
That's really
I still love the original, and like both of them. I texted you and Jesse the other day, the day after we talked about the movie. I sat down because I've got it on the DVR, and I was like home alone, and I'm just kind of sitting here doing my thing, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna watch the first couple scenes of Maverick again, and then I'll just shut it off. Well, the next thing I know, I'm texting you guys. I just sat down to watch the first 2 scenes, and now the movie's ending.
The movie's over.
And that's the common denominator for both. Whether you think the original or the sequel is better, I can sit down and like I've said before, Top Gun is the movie that I've seen the most of any movie in my life. It's got to be over 50 times, if not,
Wow.
pushing 100 at this point. But I can still sit down, start to finish, enjoy it just like the first time I watched it. And Maverick is pretty cool. Now, Maverick, there were a couple, maybe some of the, some of the Penny story, I kind of forwarded through a little bit, to kind of speed up the process, just to get back to the
You're just not big on the love stories, man. You just can't get you on board with any of the love stories.
I mean, I'm in on Penny,
You're an Action Jackson. That's all you are.
That's right. That's right. I've got the need for speed, baby.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. I'm glad that you're in on Penny, though, because that was a clear upgrade from the first one. Clear upgrade.
Yes. I just think story-wise, the second one is definitely better. And there's more character development, like we talked about last week with, guys in the squad and stuff like that. The other, it's not just the main characters. They develop more characters and stuff like that. So I think the second one's just a little bit better from a pure story standpoint. So,
right.
And probably overall acting as well. Because there are
that's fair. There was some overacting in the
I love Iceman, but
yeah.
It went over the top with some of that.
Yeah.
Him and Cruise both, I think, in the first one. I like how everyone is following up the Top Gun Maverick now, since we've been talking about it. So
hey, it's a polarizing topic, but everybody seems to be on board. I haven't seen anybody say that they dislike, either one for that matter, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're on board because it is a good movie.
Sloppy Joe yesterday said Maverick is mid, which I take exception with. And I think Gordy and Knott might be the one who has said that any of the Mission Impossible movies are better than the original Top Gun, which I would
hard pass on that.
Completely disagree with.
I mean, you need the first Top Gun to have Maverick, though.
Yeah.
So that part has to be, that's part of it. Because if there wasn't a first one, there couldn't have been a second one. Like Maverick is not a standalone movie, but what makes it good is they don't harken back too much. They do it just enough that it makes you feel good. And then there's also a new plot line as well. They straddle that line, I think.
They hit those sentimental notes
just
well enough.
Exactly. They don't go too much, because if they went too much, then it's, a schmaltzy, you don't want that. You know what I mean? I think they did a very good job of towing the line. It's important.
And I think where it really kicks into gear is that, when Tom Cruise goes rogue and flies the training mission and shows Cyclone he can do it, gives him the proverbial
It's the best scene in the movie.
I know. And then it just right to the end.
Man.
When those tomahawks come off that ship, though, man, too, that's like a pretty cool little. I realize it's all CGI and all that stuff.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Okay, so which summer enrollee, whether it be a true freshman or a transfer, will make the biggest contribution for Notre Dame this season?
Bo Collins. That's my answer. I mean, from a stat standpoint, I mean, he has the potential to be the number one, number two-ish receiver, start on this team. They're going to be looking at him to have a significant role on the offense. And, the rest of the guys who have not enrolled yet, Rod Hurd, right, is one, and he's a safety. But I don't think that his stats are going to stack up. Now, to football people, I think there's a chance he could have a very solid impact, but he's still playing next to Xavier Watts. That's going to be a tough hill to climb.
Yeah.
To be really, really good, right? Bo Collins is coming into a room that's, unproven, right? I mean, look, we all know that Jaden Greathouse, it was a good freshman, but he's unproven as the number one guy, right? Jaden Thomas is unproven as the number one guy. We don't know who the number one guy is. I think Bo Collins has the potential to be that guy. And even if he's not, he has the potential to be the number two or number three, which means he would have significant stats and things of that nature. I don't think any of the freshmen that are coming in the summer have that chance. So it's Bo Collins for me.
I'm just going to go with Bo Collins. That's what my answer was going to be. You took the words right out of my mouth, and I'm not going to rehash, all the rationale and everything. Just like Riley Leonard, Bo Collins was brought here for a reason. And Bo Collins was part of that group that was down with Riley Leonard in Alabama over the weekend.
Good call.
So Bo, now Chris Mitchell was there too, and so was Jaden Harrison. All three of those new guys were there. But Bo Collins, significant that he was there because of the fact that he wasn't able to go through spring practice and all that kind of stuff. So Gordian knot falling back on. Top Gun is too corny.
Come on, man. Come on now.
Just get past the fact that Tom Cruise wants to eat Charlie's face when they make out. Like,
gross. Gross.
DJ, would you rather win the national championship in 2024 and lose Golden and Denbrock, or keep the coordinators through 26 and win it all in 26?
Win now, baby. What have you done for me now? You can't guarantee me any. I guess this question kind of guarantees a championship in 26, but I don't want to wait. I want it now. I don't want to. I've been waiting since 88. I don't want to wait another 2 years, so I'm going to take the now.
Yeah, I mean, what does keeping Golden and Denbrock for 2 more years give you that you're not going to get by winning the national championship now?
Right.
You've already gone. What is this? 30. This is 36 years now and counting since they won their last national championship. So you take the championship. If you get the championship, you take it. If they move on, they move on. That's good for them. It's also good for your program. As much as it would stink to lose 2 quality coordinators like that, because of the fact that you just won a national championship, your head coach is still in place. You're probably going to promote Mike Mickens into the defensive coordinator position, would be my guess. What happens offensively might not necessarily have someone on staff, but you're going to get the cream of the crop when it comes to the candidates to replace either one of those guys, really.
I also don't think Mike Denbrock's going anywhere anytime soon. If they win the national championship, Mike Denbrock's still going to be the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame.
Well, now I know that he said, not to interrupt you, but I know that he said that he's kind of like past, that goal of being a head coach. But if you just kind of going back to what we were talking about before, if you produce back-to-back Heisman winners at 2 different schools and win a national championship, I think you're going to be in demand. So that could change.
Oh, I think he'll be in demand.
Change it very quickly.
I just don't think he wants it. I feel like I know him well enough.
If a good enough Power 5 school comes calling and throws that kind of cash at you, I think that he would have a hard time. He would think long and hard about it, is my guess.
It's fair. I just don't think that's on his radar. My opinion.
Again, if it's high tier, like a top 25 perennial type program versus a mid to lower tier type program, I think that could make him kind of turn his head a little bit. That's just what I think.
Fair enough.
My opinion. My opinion can also change based on information.
This is very true.
Different information becoming available, right? Mm-hmm. So where did it go? We'll just follow that with this. Would Mickens leave sooner for a defensive coordinator job elsewhere or stay for a later defensive coordinator job at Notre Dame?
I would say if you think that Mike Mickens hasn't been offered a DC job someplace up to this point, not saying perennial top 25, Power 5 school, but I'm sure he's been offered a defensive coordinator job someplace, somewhere. I think he's going to stick around because he has shown loyalty to Marcus Freeman in the past. I think he continues to show loyalty to Marcus Freeman, and I don't think that Al Golden is going to be here forever. So changing my tune on this side of the football, I think Al Golden will leave. And again, if they win the national championship, we're obviously talking in craziness at this point. Yeah. If they win the national championship, Al Golden's going to have his pick of potential head coaching jobs that are open.
Or what if you even get to the Final Four and or national championship game and lose a very close competitive game? Not a game like we've seen them lose in the playoffs in the past. I think that Al Golden is definitely going to be in demand.
Yes. And I think you've got a great in-house candidate, Mike Mickens, to just take over that role. So
Right. And Marcus Freeman said himself last year that the guy has become
ready.
a candidate, that he's ready to be. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So there are a couple questions in here about the kickoff time release and the Louisville game being on Peacock and all that. We're going to address that in rapid fire. So we'll kind of hold on to that since we've got a ton of other topics coming into the.
Yeah, we do. I just keep starring stuff as they come through. So
I know.
You know.
Let me see. Indy Sailor. Over under for A&M was 46.5. I would take the under. What do you think? It's 46.5 is a lock of an under for me. I know that's not a ton of points, but with those two defenses and a season opener, I see, like remember Carter Carls when I had him on, was that last week? I think it was last
9-6 or whatever.
He was saying 9-6. Now I don't think it's going to be that low.
No.
But I could easily see like a 21-17, 24-17 game. That gets you under 26.5. I think it's that kind of range of game.
I still think it's going to be the under, but I think the margin will be bigger. I think Notre Dame scores more, and I think A&M scores less. Okay. But I still think it'll be the under. So, we'll see when we actually make the predictions.
Maybe like fourth quarter Notre Dame tacks on some extra points and that kind of thing.
I feel like Notre Dame's offense is going to be better than maybe some people think against A&M's defense, right? And I think Notre Dame's defense is elite. And I'm not impressed in any way with A&M's offense. I think that's going to be the key. A&M's offense is going to have a really hard time scoring against Notre Dame's defense.
Yes.
And I think Notre Dame's offense will score on A&M's defense. It may take a minute, right? They may have to work some things out, and they may have to kind of get their feet wet and kind of, get into the groove, kind of a deal. But I think when it's all said and done, I think Notre Dame does put up some points, and I think the defense holds A&M offensively. I have a hard time seeing A&M scoring a bunch of points in this game. I really do.
I do too. And, like maybe even my 17 could be too high. But, that's the biggest question Notre Dame will have defensively in that matchup is still going to be Benjamin Morrison's health. Like there's a lot I think that
for sure.
That,
for sure. I kind of like, America's truth broker. He says Notre Dame 27-10. I could see that. Like that's a score.
That's not bad. And that still gets you 37 total points.
Yeah. That's kind of a score that's in my head. I could see that being the case. Maybe they tack on another field goal or something like that, 30-10. Like I could see in that. I could see it in that neighborhood.
Yeah. I'm like just looking at what Texas A&M has at quarterback. I'm like Weedman does not impress me.
Whoever they put back there, I just think Notre Dame is going to tee off on whoever it is, and there's going to be some balls up for grabs.
Yeah, I mean they don't have a Riley Leonard to bail them out with the legs when things go wrong, like Elko had last year.
Right.
Notre Dame has that. So
literally.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Speaking of which do you prefer? Notre Dame has a top 5 total offense and a top 20 defense, or the defense is top 5 and the offense is top 20. I would take the second one. Defense 100%. Top 5, offense top 20. Because with that defense, if you have a top 20 offense, that's all you need. You don't have to
score.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I think that's exactly what you would want. Given this particular scenario, right? Because I think that a top 20 offense can still, win you a lot of games. If you look at last year's stats, the 20th ranked offense in the country was North Carolina, and they scored 34.5 points a game. That's enough points for me if I've got a top 5 defense.
Yes.
So I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? If you look at the defense, let's see, scoring defense, the top 5, the 5th best defense in the country last year was Georgia, and they gave up 15.6 points a game. So, and by the way, Notre Dame was 7th, giving up 15.9 points a game. So if you're giving up less than 16 points a game and you're scoring 35, I like your chances.
Yes. Yes. Now, especially if you're scoring even if it's not 35 to 45 against the elite teams, but if you're
Right.
scoring over 20 points a game against the better teams on your schedule, and you're holding them to around, somewhere 17 to 20, I really like your chances.
Yeah. And this does not take away, by the way, the fact that we've said in the past, Brian and I have had this discussion many times in shows, that in the past, defense wins championships. Brent Smith, he says defense wins championships. Defense gets you to the championship. Offense wins it for you.
Yeah.
And I still think that is the case. You still need to score in the playoffs. I mean, if you look at
Michigan last year.
I mean, you got to score. You have to score. So you still need a good offense. I mean, but I think top 20 will get it done for you. Yes. Right? So I'd take top 5, top 20. That'd be great.
Yep. Speaking of Brent, he says, how will all the loyal Irish fans react to Marcus Freeman with an A&M loss to start the season 0-1? Talk about Danny Downer. I mean,
seriously,
come on, man.
Hot seat. Fire him. That's what you're going to hear. I mean, it's going to be the most depressing post-game show ever. It'll be late. It's game 1. People are sauced up. They're going to want to fire Marcus Freeman. He doesn't know what he's doing. Why did they go out and get Riley Leonard? I mean, those are the things that you're going to hear if Notre Dame loses game 1. It's going to be the sky is falling.
Look, we did the show yesterday about is it make or break? It doesn't. It's not make or break, but if that happens, then whether it's completely realistic or not, you're going to start hearing some hot seat type stuff
100%
right away, because it's like, well, you don't play that many good teams this year, and here you go on the road and you lose to a good team right away when this should be a playoff team. That
correct.
You're going to hear that.
Yep.
And like Jesse said, worst case scenario, like no one's expecting a 7-5 season, but if this season turned into a 7-5 season for Marcus Freeman, then he definitely slides to the hot seat. And it does, again, I don't expect his job to ride or die on what this season looks like. But if he's not in the playoff this year, then it definitely, as you go toward year 4 does become make or break for Marcus Freeman in that instance, I think. If you're not at least in the playoff this season.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
because that means you're probably a 9-3 team.
And that's not a step in the right direction. There's no way that you can justify a 9-3 season against this schedule. I'm sorry. Right. You just can't unless, something tragic happens from an injury standpoint. And we're talking multiple injuries on both sides of the football, multiple season ending injuries. And even then 9-3 is hard to justify because you do have amazing depth on this roster, to be perfectly honest. So not 9-3, that's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, 2 MAC teams and 2 service academies.
Yeah.
Put you almost halfway to 9 just right there.
Good call. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And you might as well throw Stanford in there too, because they're terrible.
Yeah. Apparently they're recruiting better though. Well, I don't know how much impact that'll have this season, but do you guys think Sullivan Absher? I had to look at that for a second. There's a little typo. That's okay. Everybody typos every now and then. Do you think Sullivan Absher can take the right tackle position during fall training camp?
It's going to be very difficult. I don't necessarily see that happening. I need to see Sullivan Absher in person before I make any kind of declarations that it's impossible. There's no way that's going to happen. I know he's a very good recruit. I get it. And I can't even say that offensive linemen don't start as true freshmen because the 2 guys that just left and went in the first and second round of the NFL draft started as true freshmen. So I can't even make that declaration. But those guys are anomalies. That is not a normal situation. True freshmen generally don't start at Notre Dame on the offensive line.
Right.
And so that's a very difficult hill to climb if you're Sullivan Absher. I need to see him in person. I would say if you're making odds, I would say the odds are very slim, right? Like scale of 1 to 10, I think it's like a 2. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's highly unlikely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The 2 guys who are there, Emil Wagner and Tosh Baker are. There's room for both of those guys to improve, but at the same time, I feel like they're in that 1 and 2 spot. They were in that 1 and 2 spot this spring for a reason. Now, that doesn't mean that things can't change, in fall training camp, because things swung last year when we kind of least expected them, and all of a sudden, you had a different starter than we thought that there was going to be last year. But I would put it in like where you put it. I'd put it around a 2 or a 3.
And
in terms
and he is a redshirt freshman. That's my mistake. He's not a true freshman. He's a redshirt freshman, but he's also, if he was a legit contender for the position, then he would be a legit contender for the position. He's been there all fall. He's been there all spring, and he's not mentioned as a guy that they think is going to be competing for that tackle position. So yes. I just think it's a little slim.
How many points a game do you think Notre Dame needs to score to be looked at as a vaunted offense?
Vaunted? I mean, if they're going to be a vaunted offense, are we talking like 2019 LSU, like that kind of a vaunted offense? Like that's what I think of when I think vaunted. Like, these guys could score on anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're looking at 40 points a game, minimum. Absolute floor
for sure
to be a vaunted offense.
Yeah.
Right? And that, I think LSU last year, I just had it pulled up. I think LSU was about 45 points last year.
Sounds right.
Does that sound right?
They were in that range. I know that.
Yeah, here we go. Scoring offense. There were 5 teams that scored 40 points or more: Georgia, Oklahoma, USC, Oregon, and LSU. Did you look at any one of those 5 offenses last year, Sean, and think vaunted offense? I didn't.
No, especially USC. I mean, that's what's crazy is USC had the 3rd highest scoring offense in the nation, and look what it got them.
Right.
So again, that's why I would going back to that question we had before. That's why I would take a top 5 defense for Notre Dame, because USC was nowhere close to that from an offensive standpoint. That's why it didn't matter. And by the way, Notre Dame was also 7th in the nation at just a shade under 40 points a game last season. So they were in the ballpark. And so, like vaunted, do what you want. Again, like with this schedule, there's zero reason that Notre Dame shouldn't be averaging well over 40 points a game this season.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, last year, everybody thought Notre Dame's offense was terrible, and they were the 7th best team scoring offense-wise in the country. I mean,
yeah,
but that's the bar, right? I mean, that's the bar for people. And I get the fact that they were just shy of 40 points a game. It was 39 point something. They didn't put up the points against 39.2. Thank you. They didn't put up the points against the teams that mattered. Like I get it. That's where the rubber meets the road, right? And so that's what they're hoping Mike Denbrock can do: put up points against the good teams on the schedule, not just run it up on the not so good teams. But again, they were 0.8 away from where I said the floor was to be a vaunted offense. Like I just think vaunted offense is something that we just don't see that often. That's the key word to me, is vaunted, right? Last team for me was the Joe Burrow LSU team. Like that was the last time I would even use that word.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I mean that it was definitely elite, vaunted, whatever you want to call it. Like that was one of the best offenses that you're ever going to see when you've got Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson all on that team. They were just sick with talent, basically.
Right.
Brent says because Hartman beat up on the weak teams, it really wasn't that much different than what Ian Book did a few years back.
Right. Don't put it all on Sam Hartman.
18 season, I mean, in 18 or 19, I can't remember which season it was now specific, but there was Ian Book had 15 touchdown passes against the group of 5 teams. And then it was like maybe 8 to 10 against.
It was a single
Power
digit.
5.
It was a single digit, if I remember correctly.
I'm thinking 8.
Yeah.
Something like that against the Power 5 teams.
Right.
So yeah, exactly.
This has been it's been a problem at Notre Dame for a while. Let's just put it that way. So Notre Dame needs to show up against big teams. I mean, that needs to happen on a consistent basis. offensively.
Faux show. Vince, are you ready for some rapid fire?
Oh, I'm always ready for some Wednesday rapid fire hump day.
There's a lot of stuff to get to. A lot of
There
stuff
is.
to get to in rapid fire today. And as always, I'll kind of probably pluck one or two from the chat in here as well. Fill in the blank. Pro Football Focus asked this question on Twitter. Who has the best secondary in college football? They gave us multiple choice options. Oregon, Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame were the five. And it's blank that the Irish are on that list.
Totally deserved that they're on that list. As I was reading through the questions, I thought it was going to be, Notre Dame got snubbed again, and that was going to be the question, right?
Uh-huh.
But they belong on that list. I mean, look, I'm not going to say that I can speak chapter and verse about all those other teams and what they're able to do. I know Notre Dame. I know the players that they have back when all healthy, because you had to have that caveat, right, for Ben Morrison. When healthy, this is one of the best secondaries in the country. I mean, they just are, based on the talent level that they have, and assuming that Rod Hurd picks up where he left off, last year and carries that on to this year. There's not going to be too many secondaries that are better than Notre Dame. They deserve to be on this list, and I think they're going to back it up once the season starts.
I chose my wording carefully when I did this because I didn't want to sort of give away like what my answer was going to be. To me, the fact that you were seeing, because look, Oregon, Iowa, elite defense. Obviously, they're not a playoff team, but look at Ohio State and Michigan specifically, two teams that have become perennial playoff teams. But there are two positions that have held Notre Dame back from joining the ranks of the truly elite. Now, they have been, I think it's over the last 10 years, they have, they're in the top 10 in terms of top 10 finishes in the nation and that kind of thing. But in terms of actually being able to not just compete with, but beat the elite teams in the country, quarterback and cornerback are the two positions.
Yep.
And so the fact that Notre Dame now, in a pretty short amount of time since Mike Mickens got here and since Mickens and Freeman have been together, have turned that side of the ball, that specific position group into a strength and not even just a, not a liability, like a break-even type proposition. The fact that it is now a true strength and it is continuing to trend upwards with both the development and the recruiting that he is doing, it to me, it shows how Notre Dame is really on, right on that doorstep of being not just a team that's in the playoff, but is legitimately going to be competing for national championships every year because of where those two positions have trended, whether it's with the transfer portal with the guy like Riley Leonard, on the quarterback side, and the, Carr and Deuce Knight and those kind of guys who they're recruiting at an elite level at those two very important positions. And that's why Notre Dame is going to be competing for a national championship very soon.
And look, Notre Dame has had the occasional good corner, right? But they've never had that tandem and the depth that they have now, right? Last year, when they had Ben Morrison and Cam Hart for the last 2 years, and now Cam Hart passes the torch to Christian Gray, and you've got Jaden Mickey, and you've got all these guys, right, that are elite. I mean, these guys are elite, plain and simple. They're elite, and the depth is elite. It's not taking away guys for Love and, some of these other guys that have played corner at Notre Dame. Every 4 or 5 years, they have a good corner. You know what I mean? It's that kind of a thing. But now it's consistent and it's depth. And, remember, Clarence Lewis had to start as a freshman. Does everybody remember that? And by the time he became a senior, he was a pariah. And now he transferred.
Right.
I mean, that should tell you where things have gone in the cornerback room at Notre Dame.
And look, we've got a couple people chiming in, quarterback receiver. Josh said, I thought it was quarterback receiver. I mean, there's an argument for receiver as well. But what happened in 2018 in the playoff game, as soon as Julian Love had to come off the field, they got torched.
Exactly.
Right? And that's especially, they've gotten better since 2018, but they have really closed the gap since probably 2021, basically, when Mickens came aboard, and then the next year when Marcus Freeman came aboard. That's where they've truly closed the gap. It was incrementally getting better.
Right.
But again, go look at any of the big bowl games that Notre Dame has played in against the Ohio States and LSU's of the world. In the, obviously there are some wins against LSU, but I'm talking about in, BCS/New Year's Six type bowls. Their secondary has just been torched in those games. Just go back and watch some of those games. And that's where, that's why I say that quarterback and corner have really what's held them back from truly being able to make that step. Again, okay, you can say wide receiver, but they've also
they're not above corner. No way.
Right.
Not a chance.
Like you still have Will Fuller. You still have Chase Claypool. You still have Miles Boykin. All these guys have been in the NFL. You still, you still have Michael, why am I drawing a blank? Floyd, thank you. Like, you've had some elite receivers come through here at at least a more consistent rate. Now, it's been more recently between the Dell Alexander, Chancey Stuck, that's especially the Dell Alexander years. I mean, obviously things needed to improve quite a bit, but again, it's like, if you can shut them down, you can figure things out on the offense.
Absolutely. Well, look, you can say what you want about the wide receiver room. You know what helps a wide receiver room? A good quarterback. And they haven't had that in a while.
Right.
They haven't had an elite quarterback. Okay. There's been a lot of guys that have been drafted at wide receiver at Notre Dame. And yes, Book was drafted. I don't know why, but it only takes one team to draft him. And that's obviously what happened. But I mean, Julian Love isn't even playing corner in the NFL. He's playing safety.
Yeah.
So the argument goes back to they haven't had consistent elite corner back play at Notre Dame on a consistent basis. Sly Fox says Hamilton and Love, but no quarterback or dominant wide receiver in the NFL. Again, those are both safeties. We're talking cornerback. And now the depth at cornerback. Not
just secondary, corner. Guys who can match up with elite.
Corner's elite.
That's why the Ohio State game was as close as it was, really, the last couple of years, because the corners matched up with legit NFL talent at wide receiver. First-round draft pick type guys at wide receiver. Top 10 receiver last year. That's why those games stayed as close as they were, is because of the matchups out there on the perimeter with the corners and opposing wide receivers.
Right. No doubt about it.
Yes. We're all in concurrence on that. So Notre Dame and NBC announced game times for Fighting Irish home football games this season today. It'll be the 34th consecutive season that Notre Dame home games have been televised exclusively, by NBC. And of course, the Peacock is in there as well. The September 7th home opener against Northern Illinois, going to kick off at 3:30 in the afternoon Eastern time, as will games against Miami, Ohio, Louisville, Stanford, and the home finale against Virginia. Florida State on November 9th will kick off at 7:30. That'll be the only home primetime game this season. And the Shamrock Series game against Army, November 23rd at Yankee Stadium, is going to kick off in primetime as well at 7 o'clock. So for starters, Vince, thoughts on those game times? Any game times that you would change in that mix that I just ran through?
So game times, no. I as soon as that post came out, the email that we got, I immediately texted you and Brian. I was like, yes, only one night game. Woo! Like, I was excited about the fact that there's only one night game because I can't stand night games. And I'm sorry. I know that's going to disappoint people, and you are more than welcome to be disappointed with me. But I hate night games, and so I'm happy that there's only one. And I think they picked the right one. I think Florida State is a prime example of what should be the home night game on this particular schedule. Now, the rest of them are all 3:30, which is interesting. There's no 2:30 games in there. And usually towards the end of the season, they start kind of going to 2:30 because, it gets darker sooner and all that. Look, the last couple games of the season that are at home are going to end up as night games because they're going to start at 3:30 and they're going to be, it's an hour later and it's going to be dark by the time we're walking out of the stadium. So, it's consistent. I won't forget what time games are going to start. I guess that's nice, but it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, that's true. Like everyone's at 3:30 except for the one.
Easy peasy,
in terms
baby.
of the ones that we're driving to.
Right, exactly. Year. So 3:30, I can get on board with 3:30. That's fine. And then the one night game, I'm on board with. So I was actually happy with the dissemination of the times.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a couple 2:30 games myself. Wouldn't see me crying about that. But yeah, from the perspective of, hey, you're not going to forget the kickoff times. I think that's a good point because you got all these 3:30.
In the past, it's been like 3:30, 2:30, 3:30. Like, there was no consistency as to why a game was at 2:30 or 3:30. My guess is because NBC now has more football product to show other than Notre Dame.
That's why they can
have
set
to
up their
consistent.
time.
Yeah,
they've got their 3:30 Notre Dame kickoff, and then they've got their post-game show.
They want to lead right,
and that probably leads right into their whatever they call their their primetime show, and then they're into their big game, Big Ten kickoff that night. So that actually I hadn't thought about that, but that's a great point. That's got to be why everything has to be consistently at 3:30 now.
If they ever have a noon, I don't think they would, but I don't know what NBC, what their particular, but if they ever had like a noon game, it fits perfectly, right? You got a noon game, you got a 3:30, you got a 7:00 or whatever it happens to be, right? So, it makes sense now, and it's just becoming more streamlined.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in terms of any that I would change, absolutely none I would change, but fill in the blank. It's blank that Florida State is the only primetime game.
Totally appropriate. And I think they nailed that one. There are some times, like the past couple of, like even 2 years ago when they had Stanford as the night game, I was like, really? That's the night game, right? Because they kind of got into a rut where, you've got that October spot where it's either Stanford or USC, and that was the night game. It's like, okay, USC I kind of get, obviously, and the games have gotten better over the last few years. But I never understood the Stanford game. They haven't been good in a little while.
Yeah, and to your point, 2014 was the last time
there you go.
that game, whether it was USC or Stanford, that was the last time that game was, the October game that you're talking about with the California team was not televised in primetime. And think about 2012. Remember the goal line stand in the rain against Stanford and all that? That was actually an afternoon game. It was starting to get dark because it was raining and getting close to evening, but that was an afternoon game even. And they really shifted that because it used to be that you only got one primetime game. And then they started shifting it because they wanted two. But why would you put any of the other games in primetime, especially when you're NBC and you're televising Big Ten games in primetime now? If there's a Notre Dame game that makes sense to put in primetime, I can see you doing it, but there's not another game that makes sense. Stanford is completely undesirable.
Oh my gosh, so undesirable. They're that bad. I don't care what their recruiting is right now. They don't belong in a night game at Notre Dame in this year, in 2024.
Right.
The only one you could even make a case for would be Louisville, right?
That's what I was going to say.
It's the only one you could even make a case for. I don't know if Louisville is going to take a step back. Maybe it was like a first year kind of a deal with Jeff Brom and the whole thing. They've got a lot of pieces to replace going into this year. And so I don't know, how good or bad Louisville is going to be, but that would be the only other one I could make a case for. But Florida State is the obvious one. That's the one you want at night. It's a historic rival with Notre Dame. I think they were undefeated last year, right? So, they've got, or in the regular season, but they've got the cachet coming in. They would get the eyeballs as a primetime game. Florida State gets eyeballs. I don't know that Louisville would get the eyeballs that you want. It's still Notre Dame, but when you're pairing it with somebody, Florida State's going to get way more eyeballs than Louisville will.
Yes, exactly. And now part of this that you have to remember as well is that Shamrock Series game. So even though technically there are not two Notre Dame home games that'll be in primetime, because Army at Yankee Stadium is the Shamrock Series game. That game is going to be in primetime, and it's televised by NBC. So for NBC's purposes, again, even though it's not a Notre Dame home game, they'll still get 2 Notre Dame primetime games because you'll get Notre Dame Army in primetime.
That's true. Yep, that's absolutely true.
And now Joe is saying that Louisville could end up being a primetime game if they're undefeated. Remember now, that only happens with ESPN and the road games. That's
correct.
That doesn't happen. They announce these times. These are basically set in stone now.
Those aren't changing, Joe. I understand why you might be confused about how, that whole thing works. But yeah, ESPN, the ACC, they wait, right? And you generally find out the Sunday, not the Sunday before, but like the Sunday that's 2 weeks before, as to when that game is going to be played at what time. Is it going to be the night game? Is it going to be the afternoon? Is it going to be at noon? Right? That won't happen. These games, if that was going to happen, if there was any chance that was going to happen, they would have put TBA next to this game. And they were like, you know what? We're going to wait and see.
Right.
But they had, by announcing it, this is the time, period. If you look at anybody's ACC schedule, right, their home schedule in the ACC, every one of those games is TBA. There's no times next to them because they don't decide the ACC slate with ESPN until like 2 weeks prior.
And I'm looking here at, because again, you have to factor in, NBC, because of this contract that they have with the Big Ten, they're slotted. They have to give the Big Ten X amount of primetime games. And Ohio State is at Michigan State the day of the Louisville game. Nebraska is at Purdue. Oregon at UCLA. Remember, those are Big Ten games now. Wisconsin, USC, I would imagine that's going to be their primetime game that day or that night, whatever.
Agreed.
Those are your prime options, I think, right there. And I think Wisconsin, USC is probably going to end up being the primetime game the same day as the Notre Dame Louisville game. Speaking of that game, it's blank. That Notre Dame Louisville is going to be the Peacock only streaming game this season.
Now that surprised me. That is surprising. I figured it was coming at some point. Like they were kind of, dipping their toe into the water with the Peacock game, having it be like a MAC game or whatever. And people complained about it, but they were kind of getting used to it. You knew that this was coming. You knew that there was going to be a Peacock game at some point that was going to be a game that mattered, to be perfectly honest. And the Louisville game matters. I mean, it's arguably the second best home game on the schedule. And now that's a Peacock only game. This is just the beginning, folks. This is the beginning. Don't be surprised. I was surprised it happened this soon, I guess. But this has always been the plan. I will say that. This has always been the plan.
I mean, remember Jack Swarbrick a few years back when that first Peacock game was Notre Dame Toledo. And remember now, Peacock has never released – I don't think Peacock releases their streaming numbers typically from what I've heard for just about anything, but they definitely have not released them for any of these Notre Dame games because you've had Toledo, you've had UNLV, you've had Central Michigan.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think any others off the top of my head that have been the Peacock. They've primarily been these MAC type in the lower tier, like UNLV type. Boston College, I think a few years back was the Peacock game. Those are the kind of games that you've had on the Peacock only. And Jack Swarbrick was pushing to try to get a more premier type desirable game as that Peacock only game to see what kind of numbers they could pull off with it. So if Louisville had not beaten Notre Dame last year, I don't think you would probably consider that, with any real depth in terms of a premier type game or anything. But because of what happened and the fact that Louisville could be pretty good and, Notre Dame definitely, there's a lot more riding on that game this year for Notre Dame because of what happened last year and because of the stakes of this season. So they're going to push and see what kind of numbers that they can do on this. And from what I understand, Peacock with some of their other sporting events that they have streamed on that app, they've done a pretty good job with their retention in terms of like, what you hope for anytime you get one of these subscriptions is, you get a bunch of people who go, they pay for the subscription, then they
They
forget
just
about
keep
the
it.
fact that they gave you their credit card, they don't cancel,
Yep.
and a year from now they're still subscribers. And that's obviously what Peacock and NBC are hoping for, is that they keep some
Absolutely.
people around after Notre Dame. You jump over there, and they're thinking that they'll definitely get more people, with Notre Dame Louisville than they would with one of those MAC games, even
Yeah.
though, like, for most people's practical purposes, they would much rather see it be one of those MAC games. But
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it is what it is. Then people are just going to have to get, it's a lot cheaper to get Peacock for a month than it is to even go to the game, obviously. And so, I mean, here's the thing. Notre Dame fans are so used to seeing Notre Dame games on an air channel on NBC, right? They don't even have to get, well, I guess you do for away games, right? ESPN or, something along those lines that you have to pay for. I mean, again, as Anthony would say, NBC is conditioning Notre Dame fans for the inevitable. That's what's happening, folks. I mean, just get used to it, because eventually it's going to be 2 games, and then it might be 3 games, and then it might be the whole slate. We all knew this was coming. We just didn't know what step.
But I don't know why that's. I guess if the money is the same for Notre Dame, I still don't know why that's desirable. Like, I get the fact that you're doing.
Yeah.
I get the fact that if you do both on NBC
Simulcast,
and Peacock,
yeah,
but
right.
I don't understand from Notre Dame's perspective what makes that desirable to put a game only on Peacock. But remember, we also now have a former NBC TV executive who is in the driver's seat for Notre Dame, and Pete Bavacqua driving this ship. So obviously, he has to have something in mind that probably pushed it to this point right now.
I think having Peacock as a partner at /NBC, right? Having that streaming service as a partner, I think, is very desirable to Notre Dame, because that's probably where they're going to have that behind the scenes, documentary that they're going to have, the season-long deal that they're going to do. I believe that's going to be on Peacock. There's going to be more Notre Dame exclusive type stuff on Peacock. And so Peacock is, for all intents and purposes, like Notre Dame's channel, right? And so I think that part is desirable. I don't see Notre Dame going to their entire home schedule solely on Peacock. I don't see that being the case, but I also feel like because they're using it as this vehicle for all of their extras, throwing one game on there is kind of like hey, this is why we're doing it kind of a deal. You know what I mean? So it's annoying to a lot of people, and I totally understand that. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah. Couple different follow-ups here. We are happily independent. Oh, nice handle. He says, we continue to get screwed by NBC. Why do we bother signing with them? Well, because they signed a big check.
Lots of money to Notre Dame.
And it helps you stay independent.
Yes.
And again, this decision is not being made independently by NBC.
No,
this is a conversation / negotiation / whatever you want to call it, especially when you do have someone like Pete Bavacqua, who was just working for NBC not a year ago, who is part of the conversation, to make this happen. But both sides have to sign off on this.
Yes.
So it's not just NBC cramming this down Notre Dame's throat.
And if I'm not mistaken, and I think you mentioned it earlier, Jack Swarbrick was pushing for a better game on Peacock.
Right.
Like that, he was pushing for this for a long time.
If all you're going to lose is the Louisville game, I think you can live with that.
Absolutely.
Right? Because I think Louisville is actually the best possible experiment to see what kind of numbers you can actually do for a streaming only game if you're Notre Dame.
Right.
You would much rather have it be, like, from a fan perspective, I think anyway, you would much rather have it be the Louisville game than the USC game next year.
My gosh, yes.
And that's where was it? I think it was Anthony said, don't be surprised if Notre Dame USC in 2025.
I would be surprised if that happened.
I would be very surprised, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's going to be their biggest ticket. I mean, I don't think they're going to be putting the biggest home game possible on Peacock only.
Right. I mean, that's your premier game every other year. I don't think I would be shocked. Now,
I would
I'm
be
not saying
too.
it's never going to happen, but I would be shocked. Again, because especially when you look at the NBC agreement with the Big Ten and the NBC agreement with Notre
Right.
Dame in terms of what's in primetime and all that kind of stuff. I would be like, they've got to pick. Now, I guess, you could theoretically make it a primetime game and put it only in Peacock, but I think that kind of defeats the purpose
Of a
as
primetime
well.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the purpose of the primetime game is to give yourself the biggest number possible, because that translates into ad revenue.
Yep.
Decav is asking, what happens if Notre Dame game runs over into the primetime Big Ten slot? I mean,
We're not
it's
going to
not
cut away from Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, if it were a blowout game for Notre Dame, maybe they, finish it up on Peacock, or maybe they just start the Big Ten game on Peacock. I think, like for Notre Dame, if Notre Dame games are starting at 3:30, that means 3.5 hours. You should be done by 7:00. And again, they have that buffer time in between where you've got the big NBC has its pregame /
Right.
postgame type stuff going on
Right.
in the interim there.
They
So
won't
they're allowing
schedule
themselves some
Yeah.
buffer time.
They won't schedule that primetime game till 8:00. 7:30 at the absolute earliest. It would be my guess.
Well, Notre Dame's game is at 7:30.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So I don't think it would be any later than 7:30. And if it does roll over, they're going to do exactly what ESPN does if a game rolls over. It starts out on the app, or it starts out on ESPN2 or whatever, and then they join it in progress. That's exactly what would happen. They're not going to cut away from the end of a game.
Right. Going back to the corners, Tommy says, buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame will be the cornerback U of the 2020 decade after people realize it started with Cam Hart once they reevaluate him after his Super Bowl winning interception in 2028. Well, I don't know about all that.
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, being the CBU of 2020 decade, we're only not even halfway through.
Yeah.
Let's see what continues to develop.
If I'm going to buy, sell, hold, I'm probably selling, but I might hold on this just a little bit because things are, again, going in the right direction. But, like you said, the 2020 decade, you're going into year 5 of the decade.
True.
Right now.
And anybody that knows anything about football knows that Cam Hart was a really good corner. So I don't think there needs to be any real evaluation that comes from that. The only reason he dropped in the draft was because of his medicals, not because of the way he played. So I don't think there's any reevaluation that needs to take place. But let's see what continues to occur. Like, is Mike Mickens going to be here the entire 2020 decade? You know what I mean? Is the recruiting going to stay elite? That still remains to be seen. I think it's got a good chance to, but I'm with you. I would probably sell this because there's really good schools in the SEC that continuously have good corner recruiting and things of that nature. So, but I could be convinced to hold and wait and see.
I kind of lean into the hold since we're into the whole buy, sell, hold thing.
Okay.
Now, by the way, speaking of buy, sell, hold, different name, but tomorrow, of course, is we in, we out. So if you want to head over to the Champions Lounge, there's the thread that we put up the day before the we in, we out show, and you can drop your we in, we out questions in there. So I had another schedule related question. Miami was supposed to be on Notre Dame's schedule this season, but the Hurricanes, of course, overscheduled. So that game is going to be pushed to a future date. Scale of 1 to 10, how much more attractive would the Irish home schedule look this year if Miami was on it?
So I'm going to ask a clarifying question here.
Okay.
Is there a 1-for-1, who they replaced basically on the schedule?
Army is the team that they went out and added to the schedule.
Okay.
To get them to 12 games this season. The ACC, if I remember right, replaced Miami with Louisville. But you still had to, there was still,
Okay. I mean, it would make it a little bit more attractive just because of the history between Miami and Notre Dame. I'd put it at a 4 or 5. I mean, it's still Miami. They're not They're not the U, right? They're not back. They're not anything special at this point. Now, maybe in a couple of years, maybe they get back to where they're a legitimate contender, but they're not that right now. They're a mid ACC team. That doesn't really get my juices flowing. You know what I mean? I would rather honestly see Army at Yankee Stadium. I think that's actually more enticing to me right now than a home game with Miami. I don't know. It just, they're not that good to me.
I don't know, man. Like, if you're Notre Dame and you had Notre Dame and you had Florida State and Miami at home in the same season and potentially both of them primetime, that looks pretty attractive to me. Even if, like you said, we're waiting on Miami to get back. There's a lot of preseason hype going on with Miami. There was some preseason hype last year because of Cristobal, but I think at least Miami carries some, like, the name Miami carries much more cachet than Louisville when it comes to football, though, for example.
It definitely does. I think Louisville's a better football team, though.
No, you're right.
I want the better football team.
But from a TV standpoint and from an attractiveness of the fans standpoint, I think there would be more interest in Miami, especially because I think 2016 was the last time Miami came here. So we've been waiting for a while to see the Hurricanes come back up here. Again, like, Miami is not close to what it was even 25 years ago, let alone 36 years ago in 1988. But I would bump this like a 7. I think I think because of what Notre Dame's home schedule does look like, I think having Miami would at least, kind of provide a little window dressing anyway.
I get that. I'm looking at it more from a strength of schedule standpoint. Now, Miami is still better than Army if we're doing strength of schedule. And so I do get that part of it. But I think if you're swapping them out for Louisville, I think your strength of schedule actually goes down, which with this schedule, you don't want that at all. Like, that would be very, very bad. Give me a couple of years. Let's see if Mario does what Mario is supposed to do down there. Then I could be on board with Miami being on the schedule and getting excited about it. I just, for whatever reason, I have the Soldier Field game against Miami etched into my brain for some reason, and it was like a butt whooping.
Yes,
and it was boring. That game was boring. That's how bad boring that game was. Yeah. You know what I mean? We traveled all the way out to Chicago for a boring game. But that's what I remember for
Got
some
lost
odd
in the parking
reason.
garage and the whole thing.
Awesome.
Good times.
Good times. Yeah, good times.
Thanks for the reminder, Andre. Crank that like button if you would, and of course subscribe. Join the Champions Lounge, the boards at Irish Breakdown. Kind of turned out to be a lot of TV schedule type stuff.
Yeah, we did
on today's show after we got the schedule release today. So Fox has released its Friday night college football schedule for the upcoming season. Here are the matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona at Kansas State to start it off. Illinois at Nebraska, Washington at Rutgers, Michigan State at Oregon, Northwestern at Maryland, Oregon at Purdue, Rutgers at USC, Iowa at UCLA, UCLA at Washington, Purdue at Michigan State, Utah at UCF, and they will also close their broadcast schedule with a Friday night Mountain West Conference Championship game. So first, neither you nor I are big fans of the whole Friday night college football because of the conflict with high school football. Right. Does that schedule intrigue you at all?
There is not one matchup that I will be at a high school game thinking to myself, man, I wish I was at home watching the Illinois-Nebraska game, or pick whatever game you just mentioned. Not one of those games is like, man, I wonder what's going on in the Rutgers-USC game. None of those would make me want to sit at home and watch one of these games instead of going to high school football. Those are just those are the worst matchups of the weekend, I feel like.
Well, they're not all the worst,
Well, they're not great.
Potential in some of them, but Friday nights are made for Rutgers and Purdue. I mean, that should be that should be the Fox slogan, right? Friday nights are made for Rutgers and Purdue. I'm shocked that Indiana is not on this.
You're right. Schedule. They did not make a Friday night game at IU. That is shocking.
Yeah. But And it's interesting that, you get all these Big Ten games, and at the very end, you've got Utah at UCF. Like, I think the biggest benefit of this, unlike you, I don't have a kid who's still playing on Friday nights in high school football. So like I'm not going to be out there, at a high school football game wishing I was home. So I will be home. And what's on Friday nights? Next to nothing, unless I'm breaking out Netflix or, whatever streaming service that I'm going to break out. I think that this is perfect for like the bar scene on a Friday night.
Sure.
Especially like think about a Notre Dame home game when all the fans invade South Bend,
looking for
coming
something
into a game
to do.
weekend. All the bars are full in town Friday night, 8:00 to 11:30. You're going to have college football on in the background.
Fair.
So
Fair.
like the matchups themselves, you're right, not big time, but UCLA, Washington, that's at least
I'll be honest,
little matchup.
If the scenario that you just outlined of just kind of sitting at home on a Friday night, that kind of a deal, which if I didn't have the job that I do, nor a son playing, I would be doing, and I would probably throw these games on just to have on. Like, I would be somewhat interested in like the Michigan State Purdue game. You know what I mean? Because I have a lot of friends that are one or the other. You know what I mean? Like I would watch it. It's Big Ten. It's college football. I love college football in general. So I would watch these games if I was at home, like I said, under the scenario that you just outlined. But if I've got anything else to do, I'm not canceling those plans.
Not canceling plans for any of those games. Does that make sense?
You know what I mean? Like Notre Dame games, if I didn't have this job, which I have to be at the Notre Dame games, there's plans I would cancel to watch Notre Dame games, right? These don't do that for me. You know what I mean? These do not do that for me.
Well, like if you're one of these teams, would you rather be playing on a Friday night or face the potential of like I haven't seen for sure whether there are going to be, like for the big noon kickoff game, since Fox is in the big noon business and you've got all these West Coast teams in the Pac-12, like are there going to be 9 a.m. local time kickoffs out there in Los Angeles and on the West Coast?
Probably.
Would you rather play on a Friday night or 9 a.m.?
Look, if I'm one of those people, then yes, I would rather play on a Friday night, I would say, right? Because you're going to be playing at 4:00 or something like that on a Friday, as opposed to 9 a.m. on a Saturday. That's awful. Which, I mean, that takes us all the way back to UCLA and USC joining the Big Ten in the first place.
Right.
They should have thought about the fact that they might be playing at 9 a.m. on a Saturday, but I digress. They don't care about that.
Well, how would you feel if you're UCLA, Washington, Oregon? They're moving to the Big Ten this year. They all play twice on Friday nights this season. Are you feeling, like you're probably there's obviously it's not 100%. They did it for a reason, obviously, the money. But like, go to the Big Ten, play a couple Friday night games. How would you feel about that? Like Washington just played in a national championship game, and now they're playing Friday night football.
Now they're playing Maction is what they're doing, basically.
That's right.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but your greed got you there. I have no sympathy whatsoever. If they wanted to continue to have, the late night Pac-12 after dark and all of those different things, they should have stayed together. They screwed that up for themselves. Don't complain to me now. It's the whole you made your bed, now you get to sleep in it situation as far as I'm concerned. I can't wait for the first complaint about a UCLA, USC, West Coast team playing at 9 a.m. I can't wait. Like, sorry, that's what you wanted.
I know. Or the fact that Rutgers goes to USC on that's actually a good Friday night game to me. Like Rutgers USC, nobody wants to see that on a Saturday, right?
That's fair. They need their own time slot
like
because nobody
Fridays
wants to watch
were made for Rutgers and Purdue. Washington goes to Rutgers, second Friday night game of the season.
I will say, somebody said, is Ball State playing on a Friday night? That's Joe Allen. I am not, like, I've looked at a lot of schedules and things of that nature. The Maction, like the weekday Mac type
like
games,
Tuesday, Wednesday,
and they're later in the season. They're not early on; they're later in the season.
Yeah,
I don't like that either. Let's be honest. I don't like a Wednesday night college game, especially if I want to go watch it. But I mean, it is what it is because they want people to watch their games
Get
too.
them on TV. That's right.
And so I can't be mad at it. I don't have to like it, but I can't be mad at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple random questions kind of stacking up in here. Fill in the blank. Baseball will be blank after the retirement of embattled umpire Angel Hernandez.
Oh, I saw this question. I was so excited. It actually might be less exciting because he's so bad that it always creates,
what are you going to complain about now?
Right. It was funny. I was at the regional softball game last night. It was Penn playing St. Joe. And I'm standing up in the press box. Windows are open. It's a beautiful night, that kind of a deal. And there was some very questionable calls by the home plate umpire. And somebody in the stands goes, "Come on, Angel, you're better than that." I lost it. I thought that was hilarious. Our boy Tom Noy was up there with me. And I go, "Did you just hear that?" He's like, "No." I told him, and he started cracking up laughing. Like, that was a great insult to throw at the home plate umpire. And I realize it's high school sports and all that, but like, that was fantastic. That made my night.
I don't know if this means that we're one step closer to robot umps, or maybe this saves baseball from robot umps, because like Angel Hernandez was the poster child for why we needed, robot umps before.
So bad. I mean, he was so bad at times. I mean,
I know.
Holy cow.
And it's like the last 24 hours since this happened, it's probably the most talk of any umpire or official has ever had for retiring.
Ever since Joe West, when he retired a couple of years ago.
And of course, Joe West is out there defending Angel Hernandez because
shocker. Probably because they're roommates.
Yeah. That's right. They were roommates back in umpire school.
Yeah, right. Because they cheated off each other
100 years ago. That's right. But I mean, Angel Hernandez was like this strange combination of this completely cocky umpire who was just, cocky and conceited about being bad.
Yes. It's like, I mean, he stood on that mantle, man, and
he did.
He owned it. He absolutely. Well, I shouldn't say he owned it because he never said he was wrong, but like he would stand there and it could be incontrovertible evidence that he was wrong, and it doesn't matter. He would just yell at the player and be like, "Be better, be better."
I just saw this thing today. I didn't even realize this happened. Steve McMichael, the former Chicago Bear,
I saw this
saying, take me out to the ball game in the 7th inning stretch at Wrigley a few years back. And he made a comment about Angel Hernandez, and Angel stared him down from the field.
Right. Like, what are you going to do to Steve McMichael, by the way, when he was now he wasn't in his prime at the time, but he could still kick the crap out of Angel Hernandez.
That's right. That's right. I mean, you talk about a guy lacking self-awareness and not being able to laugh at yourself at all.
Oh, you're not kidding.
Come on. Sean Kelly says he got in late. Maverick is better than the original. I don't. They're both great. I think Vince still leans toward the original. I just think that as a movie, as a film, better story.
I lean toward Maverick
in the sequel.
I lean toward Maverick. If you gave me the option to watch either one right now, I'm picking Maverick. I think that's the better movie because of all the things that you talked about earlier about the character development. I just felt like I got to know the squadron better because there was a lot of random guys in the first one. Like Merlin, who the hell's Merlin? Like
they were mostly just dudes wearing towels in the background in the locker room.
Yes, exactly. You didn't know who they were,
right? Or smirking in the meeting rooms, or whatever.
Exactly. You at least got to know.
Like I wanted to hang with. Was it? It wasn't Merlin. I think it was Wolfman. Wolfman. The dude. We could have had him, man. We could have had him. Like he needed to be in there a little bit more,
right? No, I thought that I like the crew of Maverick better for sure.
Right. Needed more Hollywood, like, come on.
Yes.
Needed more Merlin.
Yes.
They should have sent Merlin to Top Gun. Cold pillow or warm blanket? Josh Buffo, the motivational business leader.
I mean, that's a great question. I'm probably a cold pillow guy, actually.
I think so too.
Although I do like to like snuggle up underneath a blanket or a sheet or something. I can't just sleep open air. Can't do that.
Yeah.
But I do like the cold, like as our boy the ESPN anchor
Stuart Scott.
Scott. All I could think of was Scott. And then I thought Michael Scott. Now, that's not right. That's from The
other
Office.
side of the pillow.
Yes, cold is the other side of the pillow. Like that still resonates.
Yep.
Just saying.
Yeah, I sleep in a meat locker at night now this time of year because my wife not only does she put she dials the air down to like 68 or 69, then we've got the ceiling fan on and another fan. Like it is freezing cold. I am bundled up in there. So I like this time of year I would actually take the warm blanket.
Wow, you really do go down. Holy smokes. Man, I like sleeping in the
like
cool.
a little, I don't like to be too warm at night.
No, not at all.
But
no.
it is
man, she takes it to another level.
I need help.
Let me get you a heated blanket for Christmas.
Salty wants to know, number one tailgate, hot dogs, hamburgers, or brats. He says assume beer is available if this matters.
That's easy. It's hamburgers for me. I love a good burger.
I'm going brats at the tailgate.
I thought you might.
I love a good brat on the grill with a little, charred with a little black on the outside, nice and crispy. Throw some mustard and some jalapenos on there and wash it down with that ice cold beverage. I'm going to town, baby. That's what I'm about.
I want a hamburger, cheeseburger, right? It's got to have all the toppings and everything.
I want a hamburger, no a hot dog. I want
no hot dog. No hot dog.
Caddyshack. You missed the Caddyshack.
I did. I haven't seen that one in a long time.
I haven't either, actually. I might have
the last
to see if
time
I
when
can
you
find that.
Reviewed it. Or did you review it? Did you guys review
we did.
Caddyshack?
We did.
Okay.
Back in the old Two Guys Talking Sports movies days. All right. Well, I think that's what we've got for tonight.
Is that it?
Yeah, we've pretty much run the gamut. So it's going to be you and me on Friday.
Oh, we got another bail job, huh? All
right. Jesse is actually coming into town tonight. He'll be doing the show with me tomorrow from the other side of the house, but he's playing in a charity golf event on Friday. So, and then they've got to drive back to Cleveland Friday night because the Little League team that he coaches plays Saturday morning.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
I'm debating whether I'm going to travel down to the state track meet or not.
Oh, that's right. That's this weekend, isn't it?
It is this weekend. It's on Saturday, but that's a 3.5-hour drive for a 50-second race. I'm just not sure.
Where are they? They're not in
Bloomington.
Are they? Is it in
Bloomington? Yeah,
Bloomington only 3.5 hours away? I thought it was a little farther than that.
It might be. Like I haven't even mapped it out because I don't know that I want to do it because he doesn't run until 8:30 at night, and that's if everything goes correctly. And then I got to drive home.
Right.
And then we're heading back out to a college the next day for a camp. So it's like, do I really want to make that drive solo style, like in the middle of the night? I don't know.
I don't blame you.
These are the things that are going on in my head, Sean. Do I love my son enough to make that drive? I don't know. I could pay $15 and watch it on TV. I mean, I'm just saying.
That's like, is he going to hear you up in the stands anyway?
He will not. There's no chance. There's no chance. I will feel bad if he actually medals and they get like top 9 because he's in the relay. If they get top 9, they get a medal and they get on the podium and all of that. They're seated 13th.
So how does it work? Do they have heats?
The top 27. Well, there's 8 regionals. Top 3 at every regional get in, plus the top 2 times.
But are there heats down? Like, so do they only run once and then like that's the time you get?
That's it.
Or
one time.
Wow. So it's just everyone runs once, best time.
They only do heats. They only do heats for the 100, the 110 hurdles, and the 200.
Wow.
They do heats. Everybody gets one heat, and then they limit it down to one finals, right? Yeah. But everything else, there's 3 heats of everything for the rest of the way. So you get one shot at it, man. Like that's it.
I think I'm staying home for that.
I think I am too. And it has nothing to do with me being cheap, Joe. It has to do with me making the drive and probably falling asleep.
3.5 hours and basically whatever time invested down there, and then getting back for an 8:30 one time through 50 seconds. That's
That's tough, man.
That's a lot of investment
That is.
for a relay.
This is all
That's
I'm saying.
Investment.
Yeah, this is all I'm saying. So
I don't blame you.
we'll see.
Just get your
I'm pulling for
popcorn, pull it up on the TV. You got a big screen. Comfort of your own home.
That's
See,
right.
that's what you could be doing not on a Friday night, but on a Saturday night. So
This is true.
Yep. Tommy says 3.5 hours.
He's a professional. You're a professional, Tommy.
That's right.
You're a professional. Come in. I'm going to have you come over. You can drive me.
All right. Hit the like button before you leave. We're out of here. Don't forget, tomorrow is We In, We Out Day on IB Nation Sports Talk. So Champions Lounge subscribers, head over there, find the thread, submit your We In, We Out questions for Thursday's show. And of course, we will answer them tomorrow. Till then, Vince, I will talk to you Friday. Talk to everybody else, hopefully tomorrow. Thanks for being here today. IB Nation Sports Talk.
See ya.